Hi everyone, my name is Alicia, and welcome to our first episode of our new podcast series called The Sex Talk Your Parents Never Gave You, brought to you by the Health Bureaus. For those who aren't familiar with us yet, the Health Bureaus do a wide range of outreaches on a number of different topics related to sexual health, like this one, physical activity, nutrition, mental health, and so much more. In this particular episode, Period Talk, we'll be busting some myths surrounding periods. But first, we want to respectfully acknowledge that we are recording from the unceded traditional Coast Salish lands, which include the Stolo, Kwantlen, Nooksack, Tsleil-Waututh, Ke-kite, Sh-ma-nus, Musqueam, Katzie, and Tsawwassen nations. I also wanted to share a little bit of information on one of these nations, the Tsawwassen Nation, which means land facing the sea. The Tsawwassen people traded and lived in various parts of what settlers call South Coastal BC, and is also called Lower Mainland. I would now also like to take this time to introduce my co-host for this podcast and fellow health peer. Please welcome Sarah. And without further ado, let's begin. All right, I'm very excited for this podcast. This is going to surely be an excellent episode, just bloody fantastic. Oh, vulva things we'll be discussing today. Okay, I'm done. I promise no more puns. So without further ado, let's dive right into our podcast on breaking down period stigma. But first, let's talk a little bit about what periods are. Often myths are formed when people are unclear or misinformed about things. Menstruation, aka periods, is a normal part of a menstruator's reproductive cycle. It occurs every month for about a week. They usually start during adolescence and continue until menstruators hit menopause, which often occurs around the age of 50. Menstruation happens because our body prepares for pregnancy, but if no pregnancy occurs, the lining of our uterus or womb is shed, causing blood and some tissue to release from the vagina. Fun fact. The vagina is actually a hole that's located right underneath your urethral opening, which is where you pee from. And this is why menstruators can pee with a tampon in. It's because they're different holes. But anyways, just because the lining is being shed doesn't mean people can't get pregnant if they have sex during this time. Menstruators may be able to still get pregnant for various reasons that we unfortunately do not have the time to get into during this podcast, but feel free to do a Google search if you want to learn more. So in summary, menstruation is a completely normal biological function experienced by many individuals, and yet there are a lot of myths and stigma surrounding it, and many negative euphemisms used to refer to it like time of the month and female troubles, which is why today we hope to clear some of that away and help normalize it as a normal part of life for many individuals. Before we go into myth busting, we just wanted to acknowledge that throughout this podcast, you'll often hear us use the term menstruators. This is because referring to all people who menstruate and have periods, which leads us to our first myth.
All right, so our first myth is only women have periods. And as you can guess, this is not true because although most individuals that have periods are women, specifically the cis women to be exact, some cisgender women don't have periods due to menopause, stress, disease, or hysterectomy. Also, they may have never started menstruating due to various medical conditions, or they may be transgender or intersex. At the same time, there are people who menstruate who aren't cisgender women. They might be trans men, intersex, genderqueer, or non-binary.
I know it's easy for me to forget that, especially when I scroll down the feminine products aisle, and the fact that many people call it feminine products. It can also be so stigmatizing and hard for some menstruators when they go through what is commonly assumed to be feminine troubles, when they don't identify as or feel like they are feminine.
Gender-neutral period products can help ease that divide between gender identity and our bodily functions. Products such as absorbent boy shorts, briefs, reusable cloth pads, and menstrual cups are usable by anyone who needs them without excluding individuals who may not fit society's stereotype of typical menstruators. Also, having period products in all bathrooms, especially the gender-neutral bathrooms, can also help reduce stigma.
Speaking of reusable pads, I just got a free package that I ordered from the Women's Center, and I'm super excited to try them out. But moving on, myth number 2, menstruators bleed a lot during menstruation. In reality, the average menstruator loses 2 to 4 tablespoons of blood, and it really varies based on a number of factors. Many people have heavier or lighter flows, which is why there's so many different types of period products in stores, as they cater for the type of flow menstruators have. I know for me, I always have a fear of standing up and staining chairs or clothing and bleeding through my pad. However, as long as you change your products regularly and are using the right type for your flow, you don't need to worry too much. But maybe best to avoid wearing white clothing just in case. But all those movies that show it gushing or people wearing pants that look like they're from a crime scene, it's not realistic.
And sometimes people experience spotting, which is an irregular occurrence of light blood flow outside of the timing of one cycle. A panty liner suffices to catch these unexpected trips. Many individuals may also have irregular periods, which is when the timeline of their cycle is inconsistent. Periods usually come every 28 days. Other people may have regular cycles that last 21 days to 40 days, which is totally fine too. But irregulars might look like 28 days for 1 month, then 43 days for the next month, then all of a sudden 20 days for the month after, or even skipping a period entirely. Just a jack in the box sort of flow that keeps you guessing. This happens a lot for people who is still undergoing puberty or nearing menopause or at the early stages of pregnancy or taking contraception or any other condition.
Also, life situations can impact your menstruation. For example, if you're feeling stressed, you might not get your period that month or get your period later than expected. Also, eating less and exercising more, which leads to greater energy expenditure than intake, could delay your period or interfere with your regular menstruation cycle.
Speaking about stress, stress can also impact your pain level, which leads us to myth number 3. Myth number 3, menstrual pain isn't a big deal. And let me tell you, this is definitely not true. Yes, it is common for menstruators to experience some degree of pain or cramps. However, just because they happen regularly doesn't mean that they hurt less. The most common type of pain is the menstrual cramps, which are the throbbing, cramping pain in your lower stomach. However, many also experience other symptoms such as lower back pain, nausea, diarrhea, and headache, which can interfere with people's everyday life. Sometimes menstruators like to take pain relievers, myself included, to better manage the pain. To relieve the pains, experts also suggest that adequate sleep, drinking warm water or tea, and a heat pad can reduce them.
I know for me personally, my parents usually don't take my pain seriously. My mom's cramps never seem to be too bad because when I'm in pain, she always gives me lectures about how it's not that bad and how she always does like a million things when she's menstruating. But the thing is, I'm starting to recognize is that everyone experiences menstrual cramps differently. Just because hers aren't that bad doesn't make mine hurt any less.
And that's a great point. I had a friend who got very severe menstrual pain each month. And it was so bad that there were days where she just could not show up to school because she physically could not get out of bed. I've also experienced similar things, of course, at a lesser degree. Sometimes I get very sharp abdominal pain that kind of almost shocks my body. And it's so painful that when this happens, I physically cannot move my legs. So I've had times where I would have to stop in the middle of a school hallway just to kind of wait for the pain to go away and wait for me to just feel a little better to be able to move again. And it certainly sucks when this happens. And for me, I know that pain also makes me emotional, which leads to our next myth. Myth number 4. Menstruators get emotional when they are PMSing. And this is false. PMS stands for premenstrual syndrome, and it is a real phenomenon, and it encompasses a host of symptoms other than just emotions alone, including bloating, stomach pain, cramps, fatigue, anxiety. But we would like to mention at this stage that we are not doctors, so if there is something that is bothering you or concerning you, please, we encourage you to go talk to your healthcare provider for advice and support.
Fun fact, there was this research study I heard about where people were invited to participate, and they were all sitting in a waiting room, not knowing that the research study had begun. And one lady accidentally dropped tampons onto the floor, and even though she wasn't menstruating, the men all sat far away from her. However, there was another lady that was actually menstruating that day, and the men sat beside her. They weren't aware that she was menstruating. Men just assumed that the lady with the tampons was menstruating, and they actually reported in the study that they didn't feel like they could trust her. So
Wow,
weird.
that's very surprising. I guess just also again going back to period and how it presents itself, it really differs between individuals. For me, I typically experience an excessive level of tiredness and anxiety before my period. And this really sucks, especially when it is, midterm or exam season, because I'm already quite burnt out and stressed from school and work. Another thing is that I'm a lot less productive during this time, which adds even more stress to what I'm already experiencing. I find that PMS could really throw you off from your routine and create the snowball effect where it feels like things are just getting worse and worse. Just like how I'm already stressed out from school, and because I'm more tired, I'm less productive and I get less work done, and that gets me even more stressed out. So if you're experiencing similar PMS symptoms as me, I recommend you to surround yourself with those who are very encouraging and caring and just very understanding of what you're going through. I find it to be very helpful when they know what I'm experiencing and there to support me in whichever way they possibly can.
Yeah, that's so true. Trying to find that support system that works for you. I find that the culture of stigma towards PMS is so weird and so terrible. I've experienced PMS and I know what it's like, and yet I still have no idea how to act around people on their periods, which is something that I'm working on. I still remember in high school my friend confiding in me that she was feeling a bit low because she was on her period. And me being the naive high schooler back then, I had no idea how to respond or what to do. And also, I know for me, sometimes I'll cry and it's like, am I emotional or is my period coming? But there's nothing wrong with crying, even when you're not on your period, too. Crying can be a nice release of pent up emotion. I know for me, when I'm in a bad mood, I often also feel even worse when I don't get as much work done or that I feel like I'm not doing enough, which leads us to myth number 5. You're just being lazy. And that's something that I hear all the time when I'm on my period. And it's a total myth. Menstruators undergo a monthly cycle, with their periods are only being a small portion of that cycle. So our hormones and energy levels dip and rise according to the different weeks or phases of our cycle. I actually have a period tracker on my phone. Highly recommend everyone to get one. And I try to plan important events and tasks around my forecasted period times. Of course, sometimes my periods are off, and I schedule some wiggle time. For example, in the first few days of my period, I try to do the least amount of work because I know it's hard for me to concentrate. And I tend to operate and process things a lot slower. And on the last few days of my period, I'm pretty much back to the usual. So I know I can take on more tasks during those days. I've just tried maintaining business as usual during my whole period cycle, my whole period time. And it's just hard for me. And I usually don't do work that well or complete as much work as I want. And it just makes me feel bad. But actually working with my menstrual cycle, it removes that guilt of not meeting deadlines and helps me do stuff to my body needs.
That's a really good advice. For me, when I'm on my period, I often don't feel too comfortable sitting at a desk. So instead of forcing myself to try to sit at the desk for several hours and get work done, I just move on and I move to my bed with my laptop and just work in my bed. And doing this allows me to be more comfortable and be more productive, which makes me feel better about having difficulties managing my tasks. So don't ever feel guilty for switching things around and we're going away from your regular routine during your cycle. That's totally normal and it's totally fine.
Yeah. And exercising might also help with PMS. But take it easy and be gentle with yourself. Do some low impact workouts or go out and move your body or do something mindful like yoga. Just try to stay active, eat well, eat smaller, more frequent meals to avoid bloating, which actually leads us to the next myth. Myth number 5. Menstruators gain weight during the menstrual cycle, which is false. You may appear to be heavier, but that's often a result of our body experiencing increased water retention, which leads to bloating that will go away eventually. It's also completely okay to give into your period cravings and treat yourself. I know for me, I crave dark chocolate, which, fun fact, has some health benefits, like it relieves muscle pain during menstruation and can help replenish iron stores that are often depleted during menstruation. When I'm in a lot of pain, I like to make mug brownies because they're quick and easy, and I get that chocolate fix. It's a nice treat for myself when I need a little mood booster.
Yeah, I've definitely gone on some ice cream runs nearby McDonald's or to a grocery store. A type of drink that I tend to consume a lot during my cycle is actually chamomile tea, and experts suggest that it can help you to relax, soothe your cramps, alleviate the feelings of stress, and help you sleep too, which are things that I definitely benefited from in the past. Also, just a reminder for everyone is just to be mindful when consuming foods that are high in salt or preservatives such as processed foods because they could make you feel even more bloated and increase your water retention more than usual. Also, when you're eating candy or other simple sugary foods, since they could make you feel bloated, just be mindful of that as well. Also, alcohol could also influence your state, since with bleeding, your average blood pressure drops, which can aggravate the effects of alcohol, increasing fatigue and your menstrual flow. That being said, we're not saying that you shouldn't eat these types of food, but just rather be mindful and be conscious of them, and that's fine, and how it can impact your body. All right, last but not least, our final myth. Myth number 7. Tampons and period cups make you lose your virginity. Okay, so before we even tackle this myth, we need to first acknowledge a stigma that is often associated with virginity. Our society often associates losing your virginity as breaking your hymen, which is this fleshy tissue that's located at the opening of your vagina. But did you know that all hymens are different? Many people think that the hymen totally covers the opening of your vagina until it's stretched open, but that is usually not the case. Most of the time, hymens naturally have a hole that's big enough for period blood to come out and for you to use your tampons comfortably. Some people are born with so little hymen that it seems like they don't have a hymen at all. In rare cases, people have hymens that cover the entire vaginal opening, or the hole in the hymen is so small that they need to see a doctor and get a little procedure to remove the extra tissue. Just like other parts of our body, hymens are a little different for everyone too. There's also a stigma around those that regularly use tampons. People often believe that tampon users are hypersexually active. And this is not true because for some individuals, using tampons is necessary for exercise or for other reasons. Also, some individuals prefer using tampons because they simply don't like the feel of pads. It is important to note that using a tampon or a menstrual cup doesn't necessarily mean that your hymen is broken or that you're hypersexually active. Like I've mentioned, hymens naturally have a big hole that allows tampons and menstrual cups to go in and come out.
For me, I like to use pads because I have a number of fears. Fear number 1 being leakage, which I mentioned earlier. And I still remember the first time using a tampon when I was 12 years old at summer camp and I wanted to go swimming. And the feeling of uncomfortableness, that feeling haunts me whenever I think about tampons now. But also, I have a fear of it getting stuck inside of me, even though I know that it's actually really, really rare. And if it does happen, you can always go to a doctor and they can pull it out. Another fear that I have is toxic shock syndrome, but it's super rare nowadays as products are designed to reduce the risk. Toxic shock syndrome is also it's the overgrowth of a certain type of bacteria and is commonly believed to be caused by not changing your tampon enough. The recommended amount of time being at least every 4 to 8 hours. The underlying mechanism is not fully understood by scientists yet, but wearing pads during lighter flows and at night and making sure to take appropriate hygiene measures can decrease your risk, as well as using the appropriate tampon for your type of flow. Being like wearing lighter ones on your lighter days also decreases your risk.
Yeah, those are really, really valid points. For me, I personally like to use tampons just because they're more comfortable for me. I was a pad user for many years, but I always disliked how they felt on my body. With tampons, I find that I can just put them in and forget about it for a few hours. I don't have to feel them when I'm running around or doing any other activities or just sitting, which is really nice. I also know that there are other period products out there that are used and loved by others. For example, I mentioned earlier the period underwear, period shorts, reusable pads, and these products tend to be all environmentally friendly too, which is great. So, moral of the story is that what period product you use has nothing to do with your sexual activity. It's all about your comfort level and what fits your needs. So, moving away from the mythers, here are some things that non-menstruators can do for menstruators. First, if you see someone with a period stain, please let them know. Whether it's a friend, family member, significant other, or even a stranger, just approach them discreetly and gently and let them know that they have a stain without speaking too loudly if other people are there. It can be pretty embarrassing, even though it shouldn't be. So be so I would not want to draw too much attention to them. But it is super helpful to at least know if there is something going on and if there's something we can do about it. Second, be kind and be understanding. Sometimes a first time menstruator may be super clueless about what to do, so give them support even if you yourself feel lost. Third, pamper them with tea and desserts. Be mindful of their needs and how they're feeling. Finally, there's no shame if you go buy them period products. I feel like on TikTok, I see a lot of videos of menstruators torturing partners by getting them to buy fake period products. Let's not do that, and let's just appreciate their willingness to help. So that's super nice, and it's something to be grateful for. Finally, for menstruators, don't ever feel ashamed and work to break down stigma for periods. Normalize periods by talking about it with friends and family, support free period products in schools, and remember that periods or menstruation looks different for everyone, and menstruation isn't something that is dirty or shameful, but is a completely normal biological process. All right, so that is it for today's podcast. We hope you found this episode helpful and know a little bit more about periods. Thanks for tuning in today, and bye for now.